Claude Opus 5 costs exactly half what Fable 5 does, every single token. And the context window is identical. Half the price, same 1 million tokens, and that gap is verified, which changes the math on every workflow you're running right now. Both models just dropped, and everyone's trying to figure out which one's actually worth the spend. So I'm comparing Fable 5 versus Claude Opus 5 across 4 real tests using verified sources from Anthropic and independent benchmarks. No vendor spin, no cherry picking. And honestly, the part that got me was when I tried to compare their reasoning scores head to head, and one of them just doesn't have published numbers, which is going to affect which one you can actually trust for high stakes work. So this comparison is for you if you're running long doc reviews, agentic workflows, or any kind of high volume API usage where the token bill adds up fast. At scale, paying $50 per million output tokens instead of $25 is a real budget hit. And that's before you even factor in reasoning quality. Test 1 is context and long doc handling. And I want to be real about why this one matters. If a model drops coherence halfway through a 50,000 word code base review, you don't find out until you've already shipped something broken. And that's the kind of thing that costs you real time to debug. Both Fable 5 and Opus 5 come in at 1 million token context windows and 128,000 max output. And those numbers are verified. What surprised me is there's no independent benchmark for long doc quality on either model, just community reports saying both handle whole repo reviews well, so the on-screen cards show identical specs across the board. The honest caveat here is that community reports aren't benchmarks. Both models have a strong reputation for long context work, but nobody's published a control test that actually pits them against each other on, say, a 200,000 token document. So the gap, if there is one, is smaller than anyone's been able to measure. Take the quality claims with a grain of salt. I was expecting one of them to have a clear edge on long doc quality, and what actually happened is they're sitting at exactly the same specs. This one's a tie. Both get 1 million context, both get 128,000 output, and neither has a verified quality lead. So score stays at 0 to 0, one test tied, and we move on. Test 2 is reasoning depth, and this is where things get a little uncomfortable. Pick the wrong model for a complex multi-step task like a Stripe migration or a physics-level research problem, and you're potentially getting confident-sounding wrong answers that take hours to catch and fix. Okay, so what I found here is kind of frustrating, honestly. Opus 5 has published scores. Frontier bench at 43.3%, best in class on OS World 2.0, and within 0.5% of Fable 5 on Cursor Bench 3.2. Fable 5 hasn't released comparable numbers, but the on-screen cards show those Opus 5 figures, and Fable 5's column is basically blank. And bear in mind, these are unverified third-party reports for Opus 5 too. And look, I want to be fair to Fable 5 here. Anthropic does claim SWE Bench Pro leadership for it, and there's a real-world case study about compressing months of Stripe migration work into days, which is genuinely interesting. But a vendor claim and a case study aren't the same as a published score you can actually compare. So this dimension is kind of a black box for Fable 5 right now. Honestly, I was expecting Fable 5 to at least have some numbers on the board here, and what I got was nothing to compare against. So this one's a tie too, and I mean that in the most frustrating way possible, because you just can't call it without data. That puts us at 0 to 0, 2 tests tied now, and we've still got pricing coming up. Test 3 is pricing. And this is where the comparison gets really concrete. If you're running an agent that processes millions of tokens a day and you're on the wrong plan at $50 per million output tokens versus $25, you're literally doubling your API bill every single month. And that adds up to real money fast. The published API rates are verified. Fable 5 runs $10 per million input tokens and $50 per million output tokens. Opus 5 is $5 input and $25 output. So every single line item, Opus 5 is exactly half the price. Opus 5 also has a published prompt caching rate at 50 cents per MT talk. And Fable 5's caching price isn't listed anywhere I could find. I was kind of expecting a closer fight here, maybe a small discount on one side or a volume tier that changed things. But nope, Opus 5 wins pricing outright, and it's not close. Half the cost on every token. So that's Claude Opus 5 on the board first. Score is now Fable 5.0, Claude Opus 5.1, with 2 tests still tied. Test 4 is knowledge cutoff, and this one matters more than people think. If you're asking a model about a library update, a regulatory change, or an API that shipped in late 2025. A stale cutoff means you get outdated answers delivered with full confidence, which is the kind of thing that sends you down a rabbit hole debugging something that was already fixed. Both cutoff dates come from blog sources, not from Anthropic directly. Community reports put Fable 5 at January 2026 and Opus 5 at May 2026, which is a 4-month gap on paper that would favor Opus 5, but neither number is confirmed, so the on-screen cards flag both as unverified. Take those dates as a starting point, not a fact. And honestly, even if the community reports are right, a 4-month difference in cutoff isn't going to change your day-to-day results much unless you're specifically working on something that shifted in early 2026. For most workflows, Both models are going to feel roughly current, and the real issue is just the lack of official confirmation from Anthropic on either side. I was expecting at least one of these to have an official cutoff date published somewhere, and neither does. So this one's a tie too, and I mean that because neither date is verified enough to call a winner on. That wraps the tests at Fable 500, Opus 5 won, 3 tests tied overall. So here's where Fable 5 has a real case. Anthropic claims it leads on SWE Bench Pro, and there's a documented Stride migration case study where it compressed months of engineering work into days. It also completed a complex physics problem in 36 hours using 1/3 the reasoning tokens of GPT 5.5, and that token efficiency on hard research tasks is a concrete advantage if that's your use case. Opus 5 wins cleanly on the stuff you can actually verify. $5 per million input tokens, $25 per million output, which is exactly half of Fable 5 on every line, plus published third-party benchmark scores at Frontier Bench, 43%, and best in class on OS Roll 2.0. Same 1 million context window, same 128,000 output limit, and the price is right there in black and white. Honestly, I went in thinking Fable 5 would justify its premium with hard benchmark numbers, and it just didn't show up with the data. So here's the decision rule. If you're running high-volume API workflows and cost is a real constraint, go with Opus 5. Half the price, no compromise on context. If you need top-end reasoning for complex engineering tasks and you're willing to bet on vendor claims without published proof, Fable 5 might be worth it. But right now, $5 versus 10, every million tokens, and that math is pretty hard to argue with.